In the movies, in especially Tamil movies or South Indian movies, you see a lady coming out in the morning,
Yes.
and then she is all decked up, and then she does this kolam. So this today is seen as a picture of patriarchy.
No, I think it's the most bizarre. Putting a kolam is, I don't know how it's related to patriarchy.
No, but the imagery that happens, because
I know,
people expect that, okay, I need a wife like
Yes.
that who wakes up in the morning, does this kolam and gives me coffee and all that stuff.
Sure.
That picture.
I do the kolam, but I make coffee for myself. There are a lot of men who draw fascinating kolams.
Oh. Kolam or Rangoli is a form of traditional decorative art that is drawn on the floor by using rice flour, chalk powder, or stone powder as per ancient Indian practices. Kolams are drawn to bring prosperity to homes. In millions of households in large parts of Bharat, especially the south, women draw kolams in front of their home entrance every day at the break of dawn. Ramaa Venugopalan, a Bharatnatyam practitioner and a teacher, started the practice of doing kolams during COVID lockdown. Continuing the practice for 3 years, she reconnects her 2D creations to movements in dance, temple architecture, history, and to several other multiple dimensions. Tune into this podcast to know her fascinating journey, her experiences, and knowledge that stemmed out of a simple practice of drawing kolams every day morning. Vanakkam, ma'am. Welcome back once again.
Thank you so much, Praveen.
The last time we spoke about temple, dance, and the politics of it. I'm also intrigued by when I look at your Instagram profile and when I look at your Facebook profile. You keep posting these wonderful, kolams. Kolams, for the audience, it is like Rangoli. Call it in Hindi or Sanskrit, whatever it is. But in Tamil, it is Kolam. Basically, they are geometrical designs, or not even geometry. It's basically drawings done on the floor. We can find it in front of every, or not every door today, but
Today, yes.
but in the yesteryears, people used to draw it in front of their houses. Even today, we find it in front of apartments and stuff like that. But those are not that complex. What I see when what you have done, those are like really complex ones, and the way you have done it, I am sure, because I am myself an artist, and I know how difficult that is to get it in one go, without having a pencil to first mark and then do it with. I think it is done with rice powder.
Rice and kolam powder.
Rice and kolam powder.
Yeah.
Okay. So I am intrigued by all the designs that you come up with, and it's like every day it's a new kolam or a rangoli that is there. So what is behind this thing? We should just talk about it.
Yeah, I think when one says kolam, right, or rangoli, it really, as you rightly said, it just brings back those childhood memories of, being a part of a street where everybody gets up in the morning and they're drawing. It's just a very simple, a chore that everybody... A community chore, right? Yeah, absolutely. And nowadays you hardly find that because we live in smaller spaces.
And these days you get stencils of kolams.
Stencils of kolams, yes. Actually, I mean, when you talk really about kolam, right, like you rightly said, it's nothing but your basic geometry. Now, in our Sanatana Dharma, in our ritualistic parampara, there is always a value that's there for every ritual that we do. There is a purpose and there is a thought behind that. Now, a kolam also arises from that particular thought. Now, early in the morning, very logically, early in the morning is the right time for the mind to be free. And that's the right time, and the oxygen levels outside are the highest. So, the simple act of waking up early in the morning and cleaning up the space in front of your house is the beginning of kind of a positive ritual, wherein you're kind of letting go of a previous day and you're starting afresh. There is a cleansing that happens, and the kolam at the very basic level is to spend that particular time doing something focused in such a way that your mind is aligned and centered for you to be able to take care of the rest of the day. Very simply and very logically put. And it serves a dual purpose, because earlier they would use rice flour and they would clean the place with the cow dung and things like that. Basically, it acted as an anti-insecticide. And also the kolam was feeding those ants that would come and collect the
it's a very
flour.
Sustainable way of living.
Yeah, the so-called eco-friendly, sustainable lifestyle that everybody is talking right now. It was just very built in our Indian ethos. So that is at the basic level. But at a more complex level, if one were to look at it, it is dealing with certain energies. For example, a kolam in front of the house is like a grid that protects the negative energies from entering in your house. So, for example, if you are there are different kinds of kolams. You have something called as the line kolams, where you play around with just lines. Then there's something called as grid kolams, where you have dots and then you are finding the in-between path between the dots. And then there are your freehand kolams, where you're just drawing different kind of designs. And then there are kolams that like you have like a peacock or a humsum or something that is more aesthetic, and that kind of, or it's a flower, and it kind of has a connect with the nature around you.
More representational kind of
Representational kind of a thing. Okay, now when you talk about, say, a grid kolam or a line kolam, right, it also acts as a protective agent to your entrance of your space. Now, if you take a pulli kolam or a grid kolam, and when you have the dots in between, every dot must be encircled, denoting that you have taken care of every pathway and you have left it secure. Okay, and there are certain things that are very important. The first thing is your bindu, the center of the kolam. Okay, that is representative of the center of the universe, the center of the being, and your own center self. That is, when you start with the center, you are reiterating the fact that you have to center yourself in your life, in your thought, and you center yourself to the higher powers. So these are some of the more deeper aspects of the kolams that are intrinsic to our rituals, and it was given to us in such a simple way, and with continued practice, one finds that centeredness, and it's like finding a discipline that will help you lead your life well, and most importantly, safeguard you and your family from negative forces. These grid columns also act as it's believed that they catch the negative forces and they do not allow it to enter into your house. So it serves all those purposes.
So if I can draw parallels, when you said sacred geometry and the line column and the geometric column, the line column and the pulli column, that is the dotted column, the grid column.
The grids, yeah.
The parallel that I can draw immediately is of, these powerful geometrical representation called the Sri Chakra, yes, or the Yantras, which is also kept in place of a deity. These are actually abstract representations of the deity itself, yes, right? So what you're essentially doing is the representation of the deity in front of your house every day.
In a sense, yes. So again, when you're talking about yantra, of course, that is a very deeper subject, and it is a shastra into itself. But what this basically does is it kind of represents the the concept of that protection. Now, a yantra energizes a particular space or a deity or a garbhagriha or whatever it is supposed to energize, right? Based on what kind of yantra you're choosing and things like that. So, Kolam at a very basic level does that on a much more simpler and on a more physical level. Now, when you're, of course, looking at a yantra and you're talking about Sri Chakra, it has a vidya, it has to be, there is a sampradaya, and everybody can't do that. Yeah. But a kolam, at a simplest way, can act as a very positive, energizing agent that can, lock the negative energies from entering into your space at the very simple level. So, as you rightly said, there is a direct mapping into how these simple geometric shapes, right, are used not just in our day-to-day life, but also in our spiritual practices. And also, again, they find great representation in all the temple architectures, right, or architecture itself.
How is architecture related here?
So, for example, if you look at the foundation of any temple, right, what shape would that be? We look at the Hoysala temples, right? So, what shape is that?
I remember a star-shaped.
Yes, so we have a lot of star columns. Right? So if you're looking at, it's the simple math that binds all these things. And to say how, when you are using the same concepts, how it renders to something as magnificent as a temple architecture, how simple as a kolam, and how absolutely spiritual when it is used as a yantra. Or for example, if you're doing a homokundam, it has to be a perfect square. Yeah. So then you have a parallel of that in what we call as a padi kolam, which is like, it is actually, the base of the kolam is a square, and then you kind of keep building on it, and it's a repetitive pattern. So when you have a homokundam, which earlier used to be done using bricks, then you have to ensure that the geometry is correct. It has to be a perfect square, and there is no leakage, and you keep the bricks in the correct ways. So the fascinating thing is about how these simple concepts are so versatile, and how they render themselves into different branches based on what each individual is seeking and practicing. I think that's the fascinating part of it.
So every aspect of this, whether you do a kolam or a Sri Chakra, these are all different levels.
Absolutely.
To sort of reach the ultimate, to, that's what spirituality is about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you merge with the union, or merge with the ultimate, or merge with the supreme.
Yeah.
And all the traditions that are there in Sanatana Dharma is all, pertaining to that.
Absolutely.
Every small thing that you do.
Yeah. And I think in my observation and learning, I think our dharma is filled with so many tools. Like, for example, today we talk about solutions, right? We have so many such solutions that each one can adapt based on their swabhava. If you're an artistic person, that tool, if you're drawing a kolam or whatever, can discipline your life in your seeking. Now, just because I draw columns doesn't mean that I'm going to get enlightenment. There could be a possibility of it, I don't know. But the fact that our dharma provides you so many such tools, that if you are a seeker, if you're finding something, if you're questioning something, you can find multiple pathways that will help you and aid you in your search. I think that's the way I look at it, and I have experienced it in so many ways.
Mm-hmm. So the columns that you do every day, are there references for it?
No.
Okay, so you're doing it like how a Carnatic singer does extempore. You're doing it every day like that?
Yeah, it is an everyday new creative work.
Okay, it just comes to you that way.
See, again, I can tell you that, it's coming from some creative thing, but I would want to draw a logical pathway to this. Because as human beings, we all go by logic. And as human beings, we fall to a particular pattern, right? So kolam is a pattern, right? You have basic geometrical shapes, like you have the circle, you have the star. Then you have all the shapes, the square, rectangle, pentagon, hexagon, octagon, and all that stuff, right? And then you, of course, have the lines and the curves, and you have the cross sections of the curves. Now, these are all basic math that we study in our primary school and high school, right? Now, kolam is a very structured way of using these patterns to arrive at a visually aesthetic, what can I say, output. Okay, so I won't say, oh, suddenly this Kolam came to me. No, of course, there is a kind of a creative inspiration that comes.
Okay, so do you think about it like premeditated kind of a thing?
No, it really comes by pattern. I mean, like you are practicing. So there is, the way it begins is you do have a thought. Like, for example, once you keep the centered bindi, you say, okay, now is it going to be a circle? So then I draw a circle, and then I see how I can improvise. Do I improvise with one more circle or multiple circles, or do I extend it with a line? Do I give a cross section, or do I draw different patterns? Do I include a triangle there? Do I include a concentric circle? Do I include a curve, or do I draw a specific inspiration from a flower or a petal or a leaf? So of course, as human beings, we work with references, right? We have a visual representation in our mind. So I don't want to make it sound very esoteric. It comes from a logical place, and it has
The patterns in the mind.
the patterns in the mind. And as and when you are practicing it, like any other art form, you do develop creative visualization, and then you start playing with the shapes, and you start playing with different angles and things like that. So I won't say it's like something that's just coming. I would like to logically say that when you practice it with a structure, like our dance, right? You learn the adavus, then you learn the hands, and then when you're proficient in it, you do find those spaces where you wonder where that inspiration is coming from. Like, you're a visual artist yourself, right? So it's like that.
Okay. And patterns, as well as the aesthetic aspect of it, is creating a symmetry of the patterns.
Yes, the symmetry is extremely important. And also the Kolam has certain beautiful, aspects. For example, it's believed that when you start drawing the Kolam, right, you should actually not erase it on the floor. So it should just happen. So the attempt is to arrive at the symmetry
In one go.
In one go. And that is very, it's a very beautiful thought, because it gives you a life lesson, right? Where you're just trying your level best, but the outcome can still be something else. So as a practitioner of a Kolam, and when you actually adhere to that, it also makes you kind of look at life in a different way and said, okay, now I can do whatever I want, but I'm really never sure about the complete outcome, and I should be able to accept whatever has come. So it has its own way in which it kind of gives you small life lessons, and sometimes the symmetry is so beautiful. Sometimes what you perhaps have thought in your mind, and when you draw it and you finally look at the outcome, they are extremely different. Like in our dance, right? We rehearse, but when we are on stage, suddenly something else comes, and we are like, oh, when did I do that? So it's like that.
When did you start doing this?
I think I started before COVID. I mean, I've always been very fascinated with Kolams. And as a part of our sampradayam at home, parties will teach granddaughters how to draw the Kolam. So it's a part of your chore. In summer holidays, you have to get up in the morning and draw the Kolam. Good or bad is not important. So it's been a part of my childhood. But I just started it, very casually about 4 or 5 years ago. But I think now it's become a daily discipline, and I'm trying to stick to it.
You seem to be enjoying it.
Yes, I enjoy it immensely. Yeah.
So let's go back to when you said that it was part of the tradition before. Now there are so many traditions that many people used to follow then. Probably I need not go even far off. It's like just 20 years from here, going backwards. Still used to follow all those sort of tradition, 20 to 25 years, or maybe even 50 years. Those were the sort of discipline, or I don't know whether to call it discipline, or what is that called as anushtanams.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That were sort of passed on. Now, why it has sort of deteriorated is that because people started questioning, why should I do it?
Yes.
Right? Children started questioning, what is the purpose of it? In cases like you liked it and you sort of carried it forward. And for some age you didn't do it, and then later on you picked it up.
Yes.
And then now you're sort of enjoying it.
Yes.
So what my question is, the the essence is broken because people started questioning it, why it should be done.
Yes.
And they started looking at it as like, a forceful sort of a discipline told by parents. In a way, sometimes parents also were not able to answer why they are doing it.
Yes.
That is also one reason. But what do you have to say about that? Because then it is, I should say, it is also seen as okay, let's take, you watch movies?
Yes.
Right? So in the movies, especially Tamil movies or South Indian movies, you see a lady coming out in the morning.
Yes.
And then she is all decked up, and then she does this kolam. So this today is seen as a picture of patriarchy, expecting the woman to be like that. So that is why many don't follow it. I'm not saying men shouldn't do it. Men also can do it, right? I don't know, but how do you see this?
I think it's the most bizarre. Putting a kolam is, I don't know how it's related to patriarchy.
No, but the imagery that happens, because
I know,
people expect that, okay, I need a wife like
Yes.
that who wakes up in the morning, does this kolam and gives me coffee and all that stuff.
Sure.
That picture.
I do the kolam, but I make coffee for myself. No, I understand, but I think one of the things I have understood, in the practice of these simple rituals. For example, when I look back into my childhood, right, my mother getting up in the morning and putting a kolam was a lovely time for me to just watch what she was drawing on the floor. Nobody forced her to do it. I never remember my father saying, don't do it. I never remember my father saying, do it. I mean, there are certain things that were just a part of the way we live, our cultural lifestyle. And then, like I said, there was a logical reason for it, right?
One is protecting your home.
Your home, early in the morning, you're spending time. Yes.
And your mind is free.
Your mind is free.
And you're centering yourself.
Yes.
And also, you're also learning an art.
You're learning an art.
Right. So all these are logical steps.
Yeah, and it's cleaning your house.
Cleaning your house.
Yeah, early in the morning, the first thing you do is you clean your house. Like today, you enter a street, when 10 houses on a street are getting up in the morning and cleaning, you just have a clean street. You don't need anybody to come and pick up your garbage. Right. And if you have a kolam, there is very less chance that somebody is going to throw garbage on that.
Yeah, and
very
nobody will
less chance.
stamp on it.
Nobody will stamp on it. Yeah. Right? So these are just some very simple practices that were a part of all our, actually even today, sometimes when I'm driving and I go through these bypasses of villages, right? There are so many times where the highway has encroached upon them, but there will be a kolam on the road. And they have stuck to it. These are very, very simple things. To come back to your question of the men, actually, it's very interesting for you to know that there are a lot of men who draw fascinating kolams.
Oh.
Yes. I'll be happy to send you a few of them I follow on Instagram.
Wow, that'll be good.
They are so fabulous in the kind of creations that they do, and
this doesn't get highlighted.
No, actually, the men kolam Instagrammers have a lot more followers than the female kolam Instagrammers.
Wow, okay.
Just to give you a consolation on that.
Okay.
But I think at the end of the day, like you rightly said, it's a creative pursuit, and I think anybody who enjoys it, who can practice it, should just be able to pick it up and do it.
And not take wrong cues of it.
Yeah, it's just a very simple art form. So if you think you don't want to do it on the floor, please do it on a paper or a pen, or do it on your computer or iPad or whatever.
Right. So are you, I've been looking at all your designs, and they're all so varied. Are you like really documenting them and photographing them in such a way that you're going to release a book on that or something?
Yeah, I do have a thought of releasing a book on the kolams. I hope by God's grace it'll come to fruition.
Yeah, somebody listening can actually can say.
Yeah, I have to. I actually didn't realize that I already had like some 1,500 kolams.
Yeah, I wanted to come
back,
to that.
Yeah, look back and see what I want to do and what to select. To put it into a book is a long process.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely there on the cards.
So when you sit 1,200?
Around 1,200.
So that means 1,200 days you have done it.
Yes.
And each one is different.
Each one is different.
Wow.
Yes.
That's like 1,200 days, meaning it's more than 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
actually,
it's
3
years.
Yeah.
Through the COVID and
Yes,
and
through the
without a break you have done it?
No, of course there has been. I mean,
Okay.
I've traveled and
Okay.
yeah, I mean,
It's amazing.
without a break is not possible. But yeah, I mean, very consistent, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And how is it? You said you told about architecture being the star-shaped thing. And
Yes.
how do you relate that to dance?
Yeah. So the this kind of discovery, right? Because I draw the columns every day. Then I also practice dance and choreograph dance and the interest in temporal architecture, right? They're all visual mediums. So once you're able to connect the dots, you will start seeing the patterns, similar patterns everywhere. For example, let's just say, let's look at the what I call as the padi kolam. Now it's called as a padi kolam because padi in Tamil is steps. So it gives you a step effect. So the padi kolam is nothing but the basic geometrical figure is the square, and then you keep building on the vertexes of the square. So it gives you like the step kind of.
Okay.
It gives you the visual of a step, basically.
Like how those ponds were.
Exactly, the Pushkarani, right? So it has a direct connection to the temple Pushkaranis or the temple tanks.
Wow. Okay.
Right? Now, if you look at the space of a dance, okay, if you look at a dance space, usually it is also, now the stages are also in rectangle, right? So you have these kind of a commonalities. Now, for example, if you look at the panels on the Vimanams of the temples, right, inside, you will all have those square shapes. And within the square, you will have the the circles and the things.
The floral patterns.
The floral patterns and the repetition patterns. So these commonalities are something that kind of binds all our Indian classical art forms. So that has been a very fascinating discovery. And then once I discovered that, right, then it is about now how many different ways can I do the same padi kolam? I just have that simple square. Right? Now, with that square, what can I do? So it is very similar to our dance, right? Now, I have this composition that I have learned. So with that composition, what is it that I can do? Where can I take that composition ahead? Right? If you're looking at it in principle. So, for example, if you take the same thing with temples, now you have so many temples, right? When the moment we look at temples, we all think about the big gopurams and things. But if you just go to each temple, everything is unique. The overall shape is the same, but the details, the particulars, where it is stationed, what are the deities, what is the detailing in that particular panel, right? They are so different. So these are the commonalities that bind, the art in your day-to-day life, art when it is done in a finesse form like your classical art forms, and art when it manifests in a physical entity like an architectural marvel.
So I wanted to ask you about the series that you do, because I saw the name Kshetrayanam series.
Yeah.
And you also put a shloka to it.
Yes.
And there is a I have seen representation of Shiva, representation of Shakti to it.
Yes.
So, I mean, are there many other series, or what is this Kshetrayanam series?
Yeah, so like we had discussed in the earlier conversation, right? The Hindu temples. And also, what is it that we can do? We have to read about our Puranas and we need to know what it is, right? So when I started the kolam, it was just like a daily practice. So I would just draw whatever kolam that comes to my mind. So over a period of time, while reading and understanding, the fact that Mondays are auspicious for Shiva, Tuesdays are auspicious for Muruga, Fridays is special for Devi, and Saturdays is special for Vishnu. So then I had a thought saying, okay, now I know these days has a meaning, and then there is a deity associated with it. The moment I said a deity associated with it, then I realized how can that deity be represented in a kolam. So when I thought about Shiva, being a dancer, the Damaru was the first thing that came. And then again, when you understand, you read your Puranas or you just read things, right? You understand the symbolism of all these deities. So when you talk about Shiva, you have the Damaru. How does one worship Shiva he likes bilva leaves. Bilva is a 3-petal leaves. It's very easily representable in a kolam, right? And then he has a chandra on his head. So chandra is just a simple curve. Then he has a trinetra. Right? So when these symbolisms started speaking, the next thought was, okay, how can those symbols appear in a kolam? So that is how these things began. So slowly, Mondays, I started playing with the same symbols and saying, okay, with just these, how many different Shiva kolams can I draw? Or how can these symbols be used in a kolam and how unique can they get? So once I started doing the Shiva kolams, then immediately the thing is about the Panchabhuta Sthalas, right? You have all the Panchabhuta Sthalas for Shiva.
That is the sky,
yeah, that's
water.
Agni, Vayu, Prithvi, Apaha, right? And space. Right? So then I looked up at each of course I visited all these temples. Then all you have to do is Google and you will find shlokas for each of these kshetras. So you see the connections are so fascinating. Right. You just have to look, they are there and they will just arrive to you like that. So then the Mondays for Shiva started happening. Then I did the Panchabhuta Sthalas and started looking at the shlokas. And I think again as dancers, like you were mentioning, off the record, how you were dancing only Shiva compositions. Yeah. So that time we don't think what it is. But today, if I'm thinking of a Shiva composition, I'm able to relate to it better. Yeah. Because now I have a visual representation and I know the connection. Right? So the Mondays Shiva series happened like that. Then Tuesdays, of course, is Muruga. And so I'm married into a family whose Kuladevam is Muruga. Okay. So my father-in-law does a Muruga Puja every Tuesday. So, and he's very particular about that. I mean, he does it in his own way. But, there is a Muruga thing. There is a photo of Muruga he keeps. And he'll go in the morning, bring flowers. And so then what is about Muruga? Then we know Muruga has a veil on it. And he knows he has the peacock. So then the Tuesday Muruga series started. Yeah. And Fridays, Devi again... Devi is of course very very potent, and the divine feminine is a great, and in my own personal sadhana, there is a presence of a Devi that I follow. So the Fridays was more like my prayer to her, seeking her really. So the moment you look at the Devi, you look at a feminine, you're talking about lotuses. Because of what the lotus represents. And then when you look at any of our compositions, you talk about how the lotus-eyed God is always there, right? So the Devi series happened like that. So this is how I started the Kshetra series. So now again, with Muruga, you have the Muruga's popular Arupadevi, the 6 places where Muruga temples are very famous. So I went and it's also my way of sharing what these kshetras are, and also to talk
learning about them,
and also to voice my cause of freeing the temples. Because our kshetras are so much more, the Sthala Puranas, and when you read the legends and there is so much value to it, there is so much Shakti there. The least that we can do is know about them. Right. So then I thought, along with the Kolam, why don't I do my bit in at least sharing this information about the Kshetrams. Right. So I did the Arupadevi video for 6 Tuesdays. Devi, of course, is an ongoing series, and that's a very personal thing because I truly seek her through the Devi Kolams that I do. And Saturdays is the Kshetra series where... So I am born into a Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam. Okay. We are Iyengars. But I'm married to a Shaivite, an Iyer. Okay. So in our Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam, we have something called as the 108 Divya Kshetrams. Out of which, of course, 106 are there, which we can travel in our lifetime. And it is believed that if you do that, you can go towards mukti. Yeah. So there are, as a Sampradayam, very traditional households go in these yatras. They go to the 108, they pick it up and they do bunches and they try to cover it in their lifetime.
Physically go to all these
of these.
Geographical
locations.
Yes,
geographical locations.
I would also like to add here that these were placed in such a way that it the culture was flown in such a way that you have to visit these places, and then that
Yes.
today what happens in like tourism,
Yes.
I mean, tourism happens in a very,
Yeah.
what do you call? It's a facade to create money, but
Correct.
that was not the point then.
Yes.
But you had to physically go there and to see the expanse of the land
Absolutely.
and see that this geography is all together, connected together.
Connected together.
We
Absolutely.
cannot, I mean, what happens today in terms of south divide, north divide, west divide, east, everything, we are all different and all that. These kind of kshetrams or the temples connected all of these people, and even people from the north, northeast, everybody used to come to the south, and people used to travel around.
Absolutely.
Right, so that is why it was done that way.
Absolutely. It was a Tirtha Yatra,
Yeah.
right? So where you are actually journeying, and it's also your life skills, right? When you're journeying, I mean, nothing teaches you more than travel.
Yes.
And also, I mean, traditionally they would kind of go through a cleansing process, and they would follow certain rituals before embarking. There were certain vidhis that you would do. I mean, today we'll just sit on a car and we'll go, but there were other, more serious things associated with it. But of course, now much has changed. But yeah. So the
Coming back
series
to
was,
the 106.
yeah, the 106. So going to temples has been a part of my growing up years. So I've always had a fascination for temples, and I love going to temples. So the 106 was always like, I've heard my tata, my parents, my uncles and all talking about the Divya Kshetrams, and it's also a part of our Sampradayam, right? They usually talk about the Divya Kshetrams. At one point of time, I thought that I should do all the 106, and I hope I'm blessed to do it. But then Saturdays are very special for Vishnu and Mahalakshmi. So in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam, we look at it as Tayar and Perumal. So she is the mother and he is our father. So they're always the Divya Dampatis. They're always together. So I thought at least mentally let me try and, understand, read about these 106 Kshetrams. Some of them I know, but I don't know all the 106. And there are vast Sthala Puranas for each. So then the Saturday series came. I think I'm on 13. It was a Sankalpam. One day I just got up, and every Saturday I would draw for Vishnu. Then I said, okay, why not do something on this series? And again, it all comes back to the Kshetrams and our temples, and to be able to share that information and let people know that this is what we have. So that's how the Saturday series. So I think I'm on I think this Saturday tomorrow will be my 13th, I think. 13th or 14th, I'm not sure.
So from a simple geometrical drawing
Yes.
that you draw in front of your house.
Yeah, and in our temple space, in the house, in the puja room.
Okay, in the puja room.
Yeah.
This is your expanse has gone to the geographical locations that you're wanting to travel.
I'm wanting to travel, yeah.
And then you're also learning a lot about that place itself.
Yes.
And the Purana
And the
or the
Puranas.
story of
and the
that
Itihasas,
place.
yes, absolutely.
So from this simple 2D drawing,
yes.
it's like, I don't know how many dimensions are there in
Yes.
that. Wow, that's
Yes.
like amazing. So
Yeah.
now we can say that this is not something forced upon.
Absolutely.
This is
Absolutely.
this is something which will increase your knowledge.
Absolutely.
Right? Adding to the logic
Absolutely.
what we were
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
So this, I'm eagerly waiting for the.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
the
actually,
book.
it's been something to. Yeah, the book. Yeah, I hope so. That has to be
No,
a
but
higher blessing.
even though I can imagine we can enjoy the patterns of it, the beauty of it, the art of it. Yes, but the one who is going through that experience is something which you cannot transfer. For me, it is like you are doing this as a sadhana, right? It's part of your sadhana.
Yes, I think it is.
Your
It's
dance
become
is
that.
your
Yes.
dance is a sadhana.
Yes.
And this kolam is a sadhana, and in that sadhana itself you are gaining so much knowledge about the scriptures and the Puranas
Yes.
and all that. So
Yes, I
that's
agree.
totally fantastic.
Yeah, I think I think the beauty really was that it all just happened on by itself, in the sense, I know it can sound very vague, but when I started writing the columns, I had no idea, first of all, I would do so many. And I had no idea I would find these connections. And then when I did my, I mean, I in March this year, I did a theme on temple architecture, Rangoli, and dance choreography.
Yeah.
It was only then that actually they all kind of came together. Sometimes, we do so many things, we ourselves don't know the connection. And I think that's the beauty of our Sanatana Dharma and the rituals that we follow,
You keep discovering.
Yeah, and like you rightly said, it is that taste is for the person who experiences it, which is why maybe even our ancestors never bothered to teach you anything. See, there was no reason to tell you anything because they said you do it and you experience it on your own. It can work both ways. For those who said, okay, let me experience it, they would find their own discoveries. So one can look at it as patriarchy or whatever, or one can look at it saying it's a very liberal thought that they're not forcing their opinions on you and they're allowing you to experience things for yourself and arrive at your own discoveries. So one can look at it both ways.
Both the ways, yes. So then, have you ever thought of doing I know that you have created a presentation. I have not seen that presentation, how dance, Rangoli and that is. I have not seen it. But have you thought of doing, this is an idea that I am sort of getting, that while dancing, can you do a Rangoli with your...
No, that will be difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, but there is one form of Kuchipudi which actually does that.
Okay.
It's called as the Simhanandana. It's called as something similar to that.
Okay,
So
but there is already...
Yeah, so what they basically do is choreography is in such a way that by the time they finish their dance, they actually have a simha on the floor. So it's already inculcated in our... it's not done in Bharatnatyam, it's done in one form of Kuchipudi. I forget the name. And actually, there must be some visuals online that you will definitely get.
Okay, but have you thought of doing it?
No, not really. And again, I think I can say this now experientially. After having drawn the Kolam for so many few years now, and what it comes to mean, right? There are certain basics like you don't stamp on the Kolam.
Okay.
You like I said, you have to rever it. And when you do it with that thought, you don't want to take it lightly. There's a certain value,
emotion
you
that
place.
you have.
Yeah, not emotion. It's sacred. Sacred, not in a very. It's important for me that it is given its due and its respect. So, I would just like it to keep it there. Yeah.
Super.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward for this book to be released.
No, it's just a thought, Praveen. I hope someday it comes to the...
No, there are so many books, and then there are... there is also one more thing that happens, I think, in Tamil Nadu somewhere. There is this group Kolam activity that happens. I don't know where is that.
Yeah, actually, it's done during the Margari season. So if
Okay.
you go to the Kapaleshwara temple in Mylapore,
Right.
there is actually a Kolam competition that happens every year. Actually, many things are happening in the Kolam. In fact, there is a ladies group who actually go to temples and they paint Kolams and come.
Yeah. I have seen that in many temples.
Yeah,
They just go do it as an offering.
They do it as an offering and come. So I think also thanks to social media, with so many people putting out their columns in the open, right? Now many people are going back and they're reconnecting and they're saying, okay, I did it as a child. I only get so many people who message saying, I did this small thing today at home. Nice. My party did, my grandmother did, I'm doing it. So I think that's the good thing about social media. Nice. It can be used very positively because it does have the ability to kind of have that kind of a ripple effect. If somebody kind of connects to it and then they pick it up, which is good. Yeah. More columns, the merrier. And if you're able to find that discipline, nice. Awesome. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you have to say for the generations to come about Kolam?
No, about Kolam, really nothing. Again, see, it's something that you have to develop. For example, I have a friend of mine who saw my columns and she started drawing, and every day she would send me her columns. So she's been drawing it for a year now. So now over a year she's gotten so better at it. So like in dance or in anything, right? I mean, that discipline at the essence, I think whatever dharma is talking about is discipline. Whatever you're seeking, you have to be dedicated to it, and you have to find the discipline to do it without expecting anything.
And consistency.
And consistency, right? And that's what even all the corporates talk about right now, and the 3Ds and 2Ds and whatever, right? But it's been such an integral part of our dharma and our day-to-day, like you said, anushtanams, right?
It's a science, actually.
It's a science. Yeah. So, but I think what it teaches everyone is to be able to pick up any habit, really. And I think especially now when we are all so, we are living in very, I think, difficult times. There's so much of distraction. We are all struggling with so many things. So going back to our roots and finding as simple as doing a 2-minute kolam in the morning perhaps will help us. Unless we try, we'll never know. It's helped me for sure. So,
I think there are many people who are doing that mandala art.
Yes, the doodling and the repetitive thing, right?
Many people say it as it's very cathartic.
Cathartic, yes.
And also it is a stress buster.
Yes.
So even that, if the people continue, it's still
absolutely, yeah. Like to come back to what we were discussing, it has just been a part of our anushtanams, right? So whether you do it on the floor or you do it on your paper, it doesn't matter, right? So, and also it's a lovely way. For example, if you're doing a kolam and for example, if you're doing your affirmations, like now the whole thing is about affirmations, right? So that's a fantastic way for you to affirm whatever you want.
In the morning.
The morning. Yes. Or if you want to chant a shlokam, you keep chanting that shlokam. So these are all so many tools that has just been such a simple part of our day-to-day culture and tradition. And if we have lost it, it's okay, but there is always time to gain it back. I mean, personally for me, I'm a very inconsistent person. But the kolam has taught me to be consistent. I never thought that I would do this for this long. I still don't know if I will continue it because I have never been so consistent with anything in my life. But it's a revelation for me saying, okay, I actually can get up, and whether it's turning out right or wrong is a different issue, but at least I'm making that effort to go and do it in the morning, right? And that teaches us so many valuable lessons. There are times when it doesn't come okay, and I make it a conscious effort to say, no, I'm not going to erase it, because in this era of everything being perfect and wanting it to be a certain way, you have to look at the beauty in imperfection. And you say, it's okay, let it be like
come
this.
What may,
It's okay, it is as is, right. And then the most profound thing is, however beautiful you draw your kolam, tomorrow morning you have to erase it. So when I get up in the morning, I wash it and I take my broom and I scrub it out, right? It's a great lesson for me to say, you got to do this every day. At least there is, whether we kind of follow it throughout the day or throughout the life, I don't know, but for those few minutes, it's telling you something. You're removing it and the beauty is gone, that beautiful kolam is gone, but then you're writing something else, you're drawing something else
so
today.
that actually ties into our thought of creation, preservation and destruction.
Absolutely, right?
It's right there.
It's a cycle. You have to go through it, right? See, there you go, the connections just come, right? And for me personally, whether it was doing the masters or dance and all that stuff, right? I truly believe that if one starts questioning, you will find the answers. And you should question with an open mind, not with a judging mind. You should be open to that experience of whatever it teaches you. It will, whatever the lessons, each person based on what they believe and what they are finding, they will find a way. There is no doubt about that. I mean, there are some times when I sit in the kolam and I just don't know what is coming, like, because we're driven by logic, right? And I'm like, sometimes, like, what am I going to do with this square? But something comes. It is a higher grace. There is a higher power that's willing. So it's just been my personal experience.
Ma'am, it's been so fascinating to talk about this subject because I know I'm an I mean I'm a practicing artist, so I know the nuances of something which is extempore that is coming, and that too with a powder like Kolam, and it has to be done on a certain scale. And so it's really amazing that you have done it so much and for continuously for 3 years, and you have taken it to a next level, I would say. I mean, mandala art people do, but that is for what do I call, for their pastime, to beat their stress. But this is something else, because you're connecting it to the universe, you're connecting it to the temple, and you're learning so much out of it, and from 2D to multiple dimensions. It's amazing to learn that,
Yeah.
and thank you so much to share that knowledge with us.
Thank you so much, because it was so kind of you to respond when I reached out. I just wanted to, use this medium to share. And like I said, for anybody who's looking for questions, right? At least if we come and share our experiences, it
Yeah.
might help somebody to pick up and find their own pathways. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me and here and giving me this opportunity to share whatever little I know. So such a pleasure, Praveen. Thank you
you
so
so much,
much.
ma'am.
Namaskaram.